Okay.
Yeah, because I'm just recovering from a strike.
Okay. Hey, Shalom Akim.
Shalom.
Shim Yahushai Brakatham.
Yeah, Bashim Ashak.
Water. Yahal Bashim Yahushai. We're here with another edition. Was trying to start earlier, but was having technical difficulties. But I worked through it, persevered through it, and now we're here. Wanted to go into, you see the title, Deuteronomy the 28th chapter the right way, because you got these devils, coming at us with this garbage about, look, Deuteronomy 28, it ain't talking about you guys going into slavery on ships and this and that, and coming with all kind of BS. See, Deuteronomy the 28th chapter, like, for instance, like the book of Daniel's, how it goes into different time periods and when different things was happening to us. Deuteronomy the 28th chapter is the same thing. Deuteronomy the 28th chapter is talking about when we first went into captivity and how it was a reoccurring.
Shalom. Yahushua Brakathon to my dear brothers.
Who's that? What was that?
Slaggy, that's on my end. A video started playing. Slaggy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so basically, we just gonna go into it, and some of the things that this devil, no cap, Mahone was speaking about. Basically, he's just being the devil. He's just basically being the devil, which that's what the so-called white man is. He's the devil. Can I get we read 2 Corinthians 2:11? We'll start there and then we'll go into it. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Right. I got some for you too.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians
2:11. Because we in this day and time, and the prophecies are speaking, the prophecies are walking down the street, the prophecies are roaming all through the entire earth right now. The things written in this Bible is popping like Jiffy popcorn every day. It's popping. But yet, you still got Jake out there playing around. And of course, the scriptures say the devil shall come down with great wrath because he knoweth that he have but a short time. So of course they got their spin doctors out there working, sitting here to try to offset the word of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, but that's not going to work. But you got something, brother?
Yeah, I got 2 Corinthians for you.
Yep.
I got something else. 2 Corinthians 2:11. It says, "Least Satan should get an advantage of us."
Right. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. You can finish it up.
For we are not ignorant of his devices.
Right. So unless Satan should try to get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. For years, we've been hitting them hard body with this, and they've been getting destroyed. But now they're mounting, how would you say, this last weak attempt to try to debunk the word of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai and try to make it seem like everything in the Bible is geared towards these dirty, disgusting, nasty so-called white people. The small hats. Because this guy, no cap Mahone, he's a small hat. All right. He's one of them damn small hats, and they recruited him, and he's definitely one of them. He's definitely one of them Jesuit priests. He's one of them. He's one of them devils that's up in there, and they sent them out. He's one of their fuck boys that they sent out there, that they put out there. Is there more on that?
On 2 Corinthians 2:11, that's it.
Right. You said you had something?
Yeah, because going with what you said earlier, that you got a lot of F-tards out there trying to put disinformation out to disprove the scriptures.
Exactly.
But one thing they can't disapprove, and what makes the scriptures speak for themselves, are the prophecies.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's
Isaiah 30. Isaiah 34:16. It says, "Seek ye out of the book of the Lord, and read."
That's right.
"No one of these shall fail. None shall want her mate. For my mouth it had commanded, and his spirit it had gathered them."
Right.
So
none shall want her mate. Go ahead.
Yeah. Seek ye out of the book of the Lord. That's of course the scriptures, right?
That's right.
Because the scriptures speak for themselves. The scriptures don't need any other book or anything else to validate what the scriptures say. Now, when you're gathering evidence, right, to prove something, you have something that's called like a substantial evidence.
Right.
Right. That's just something that you add to the proof you already got. So you might go here and there to kind of add to validate, help add to the evidence, but the scriptures are enough evidence because it has something that no other book on the planet has, which are prophecies. And the prophecies speak, what this whole Deuteronomy 28, that's prophecy. And you can't debunk it. I mean, you could try, but you can't debunk it when you get down to the technicals because it's only the prophecies are prophecies.
Right.
It went the way exactly how it was written in the scriptures,
Right.
So it says, and no one of these shall fail. Going into the prophecies, none of the prophecies shall fail. None shall want her mate, meaning there's no other book that you can match up with the scriptures. Because they got a Book of the Dead, they got the third book of John and all this stuff that don't match up with the scriptures.
Exactly.
But what that is they have information and they got disinformation, right?
Right.
So what they do is somebody that's down the path of truth, they'll give them a sprinkle of truth, but they'll mix it in with lies to kind of throw you off the path without breadcrumbs. Yeah, they'll breadcrumb it so that you don't. So they lead you off the path of truth. Okay. Right. And they have guys like, this is where you have guys like these so-called whistleblowers like Alex Jones and all these different guys.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you some truth, right? But then they'll throw lies in there, and at the same time, they're creating lists for the elites to know, okay, who's the people out there is really trying to get the truth, all right? They're all looking after this channel and that channel. Like these guys, everything's all set up, right? Yep. So it says, none shall want her mate, for my mouth that had commanded, and the spirit had gathered them. And that's talking about the prophecies. That's talking about the prophets, right? Because each prophet they were given a certain lot. The book of Obadiah, John, book of Peter's, right? So the Most High commanded that. So everything that was written by these men in the scriptures, because they like to say, "Oh, man wrote it," right? Well, it was the Most High's mouth that commanded them to write what they wrote. So that's it.
Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to hit Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. And the first place where I want to start is 28 and 36. I just want to start there, Deuteronomy 28 and 36. And let me see if I can get it up here on the screen. If I can.
36.
Yeah, right there. They might be able to say, they might not. It says,
you can see it.
The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there thou shalt serve other gods of wood and stone. Right? So what he's trying to say is, us saying Deuteronomy 28th chapter is talking about us coming into slavery. Who was the king? Who was the king that came over here with us to the Americas? Right? And we always refer to Masha. Masha is King David. The Lord said, I shall bring thee and thy king. Now, the first time that this ever happened to us, where there was a king that was brought in, a Judite king that was brought into slavery into another kingdom, happened with King Zedekiah under the time of Nebuchadnezzar II's reign. As a matter of fact, let's get Second Kings 25 verses 1 to 6. Right? We get 2 Kings verses 25, chapter 25 verses 1 to 6. Now, the very first king of Israel that was bound and brought into captivity and we were subjugated was during the time of the Babylonian Empire, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The kingdom of Israel had already been subjugated by the Assyrians before Judah went into captivity under the Babylonians. So the first time that an Israelite king was actually subdued, this is after Solomon. So let's read that in 2 Kings 25. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. It says 2 Kings 25 and 1. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his hosts, against Jerusalem and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about.
Right.
And
So they pitched against the city of Jerusalem because Jerusalem is a walled city. Jerusalem had walls around it and it had a gate. So what they did was they sieged the city from the outside and they pitched a tent against it. Now this happened between 589 BC to 587 BC. Historically, what most scholars say, it was like an 18-month siege where Jerusalem was sieged. The king at the time was Zedekiah. Go ahead, read on.
Verse 2. And the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. Verse 3. And on the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land.
Right. So, because when the city being walled off like that, of course you would leave out the city to go and gather things. Whether you were going hunting, of course, in the city you had certain animals and things inside the city, but you had to leave the city to go out and get provisions from other places and bring it back into the city to re-up. You had to go out and re-up. Whether you whether you were going to pick certain fruits, vegetables, different things like that, hunting for different animals, you were going to get figs and different things like that. You had to go out and get things, gather things, and bring it back into the city. So they just pitched outside the city and waited, and they wouldn't let nobody out. And they waited until all the food supplies ran out, until Jake started to starve. Then they made their move, but they waited first. Go ahead.
Slagger. Verse 4. It says, verse 3. And on the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Chaldees were against the city round about, and the king went the way toward the plain. And the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. And all his army were scattered from him.
Right. And all his army was scattered from him. Now, another point, it said that by night the men of war fled, and that the Babylonians were up against the walls of the city. They were waiting. So that's why in the book of when David said, "Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, race it, even to the foundation thereof." When David spoke about that, and he said, "Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom," because that was the day of Jerusalem. And that's when that happened. And that's when the first time an Israelite king, was captured by a heathen nation and put into captivity. And they did Zedekiah dirty. Go ahead, read on.
Yep. It says, and the armies of verse 5, excuse me, and the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army were scattered from him. So they took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes.
Right, they killed Zedekiah's sons right before his face. Go ahead.
And put out the eyes of Zedekiah.
Right, so they killed his sons before his face, and so the last thing he seen was his sons die in front of him, and then they plucked his eyes out. They gouged his eyes out. So the last image he saw was his sons dying. Then they took his eyes away from, plucked his eyes out. Go ahead.
And bound him with fetters of brass and carried him to Babylon.
And they bound him with fetters of brass, and they carried him to Babylon. Go ahead.
Verse 8. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house burnt he with fire. Verse 10. And all the army.
That's pretty much all we needed right there, just to show that the first time that happened was during the time of the beginning of the Babylonian captivity. Now, coming over here to the Americas, number one, we lost our identity. And the scriptures speak about that we were going to lose our identity. So when we came over here to the Americas, you know, that first batch that came over here, of course they knew that there were those among them that knew that they were Israelites. But then what do? It's a thing called gradualism. Jake was getting the hell beat out of him. Basically, the Hebrew Israelite got beat out of us. And then the children that were coming up, when the elders died off, there was nobody to what? Pass down the history. Because the elders died off. So then it's just like what they're doing now. We came up in a generation where you had respect, where you had respect for the word of the Lord. You respected an old lady. You respected an old man. You weren't disrespectful to your elders or your parents. Now this generation, right, which is a generation or two away from us now, how are they? They got no respect for their mother, no respect for their father, no respect for their grandmother, grandfather. As the generations go, they lose something. Now this generation is all LGBTified. Our generation wasn't. When we were kids, man, you know, them things, they stayed away. They stayed in the closet because they knew what the hell was going to happen to them if they got seen. Yeah. They hid it. They stayed away. They weren't out there in the front flamboyant with it. But now this generation that's coming up right now, they're all straight up LGBTQified. And that's what happened to us during slavery. As the years went on, the elders died off, so it couldn't be passed down. So we discontinued from our heritage that the Lord gave us. You can read that in Jeremiah. Thou shalt discontinue from the heritage that I gave thee. I believe is that Jeremiah 17:4, Jeremiah 17:5?
Yeah, 17 and 4 or maybe 9. You want me to get it?
Yeah. And then with you reading that, you know what these devils will try to say? See, that was talking about during Jeremiah's time. See, I was talking about then. First of all, you damn demented retards. I'll let you read the scripture first.
All right, this is Jeremiah 17 and 4. It says, "And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever."
Right. So now, when we went into Babylon in the Babylonian captivity, because Jeremiah is dealing with the time of the Babylonian captivity, did we discontinue from our heritage? We still knew that we were Israelites. So we still knew of our heritage, but the Babylonians had what? Subjugated us. But even in the Babylonian captivity, we still knew that we were Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, because Ephraim, Simeon, Manasseh, Issachar, Naphtali, Asher, Gad, Issachar, they were in the Assyrian captivity. And by this time, by 589 to 587 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar II sieged Jerusalem, they was already here in the Americas at that time. Okay. Because in around 724 BC is when they left to come over here to the Americas. So you're talking 100 and some odd years later, when the Babylonians brought down the kingdom of Judah, the kingdom of Israel was already here on this side of the world at that time. Mm-hmm. So discontinuing from our heritage, oh yeah, because we weren't able to what? We weren't able to do the daily sacrifice no more. That was our heritage. We weren't able to keep the law no more. That was part of our heritage. But we still knew that we were Israelites. Judah still knew he was Judah. Benjamin knew he was Benjamin. And Levi knew that they were Levi and they were the priests. But we couldn't practice it while we were there in Babylon.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, think about Daniel. Daniel, King Nebuchadnezzar, he knew he was an Israelite. Mm-hmm. And he even kept the dietary law. Why do you think he ate pulse? He didn't eat the king's meat.
That's right. So Daniel didn't eat the king's meat. So these cocksuckers will sit there and try to say, see, that's only talking about in Babylon. That ain't talking about here in America. Oh, yes, it is. Because we totally lost our heritage coming over here. Because we weren't sacrificing. We weren't keeping the Sabbath. We weren't keeping the Passover. We weren't keeping the first fruits. We weren't keeping no holidays over here in the Americas. Nothing in the Bible. We weren't keeping nothing.
Yep.
So we lost our heritage when we came over here to the Americas. But all over there in that time in the ancient world, we still knew that we were Israelites. The Assyrian captivity, we still knew we were Israelites. The Babylonian captivity, which we're talking about right now, we still knew our identity that we were Israelites. After the Babylonian captivity, under King Cyrus, under the Persians, Cyrus allowed the exiles in Babylon to go back into Jerusalem and rebuild the temple that Nebuchadnezzar and them destroyed, which was the first temple. And they rebuilt it. They built the second temple. But we still knew we were Israelites, even though we was carried off into captivity, right? Go ahead, brother.
Yep. I got Hosea 1:10 real quick. It says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in a place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, which is here in America,
right?
Modern day times, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living power.
Because it wasn't said that ye are not my people in Assyria, in Babylon, in Persia, in the Greek Empire. We knew well that we were Israelites. And then when Alexander first came into Jerusalem, Alexander he made a deal with the high priest Jaddua that Israel didn't have to pay tribute to Alexander the Greek, because Alexander the Greek seen Jaddua and all the priests that was with him in a dream that the Most High sent him. When he came it's in the Josephus, it's going to be too much reading, so I'm not going to go into the Josephus, but I'm going to make mention of it. It tells you in there when Alexander came into the city that he saluted the high priest. The priest saluted him. They showed him the name Yahweh. He saluted the name Yahweh. They showed him how to make a proper sacrifice in the temple, and he did. And then he sat down and had a conversation with the high priest Jaddua and asked Jaddua, what favors do you need of me? So really, the bullshit with the Greek Empire started after the death of Alexander, and that's chronicled in First Maccabees, the first chapter. The shit really hit the fan after the death of Alexander the Greek is when all the craziness started, when it came to him. But we still knew we were Israelites.
Even in the Roman Empire a lot.
Even in the Roman Empire, we still knew that we were Israelites.
Is really after slavery. Is even in after the Roman Empire, when we're in the West Africa and scattered to different parts, even here in the Americas. That's the 12 tells you that in Apocrypha. The northern tribe, they left and came here to the Americas so they could follow the law, statutes, commandments, and when
which they never was able to keep in their own land.
Yeah, exactly. But when the Spaniards got over there, right, and we read accounts all the time, they noted how these men had to be the lost Israelites.
Right.
So even up to then, we knew we were Israelites. So that's bullshit.
Right.
What they try to pass off as far as Jeremiah 17.
Right. So let's go back to so we made mention of that, and then another thing that also took place is another thing that he was speaking about, right? So we kind of spoke about that, and we'll probably touch on Jeremiah again. We'll probably go back there again, but then he was talking about Deuteronomy 28, and let's get the 52nd to the 57th verse. I just want to hit some of the points.
Hey, well, you know what? Since you got it on the screen, you want to?
Yeah. So I'll just let me just scroll down here and pull up 52 to the 57th verse, and it says, "And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trusted, throughout all thy land, and he shall besiege thee in thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy power giveth thee. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and thy daughters, which the Lord thy power hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness wherewith thy enemies shall distress thee." Now that right there, that's talking about 70 AD. Even though we read about how King Nebuchadnezzar, they sieged the city of Jerusalem, and they waited for all the food to run out. And then it tells you the mighty men tried to leave the city at night and leave, and they caught him. And they caught Zedekiah. He was on the run. They killed his sons, plucked his eyes out, put fetters, put chains of brass around him, and brought him into drug him into Babylon, into captivity. This right here, this is Deuteronomy the 28th chapter. Deuteronomy the 28th chapter was written after we came through the Gulf of Akbar. We were in the wilderness of Zin. At the foot of Mount Sinai, Moses went up to Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, and he got not just the 10 commandments, he got the law, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. He got the first 5 books. So this was received after we came out of Egypt. So this right here is talking, this ain't talking about the Babylonian siege. This is talking about 70 AD with the Romans. Now I read the part where it says, and thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and thy daughters, which the Lord thy power hath given thee in the siege, and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee. It says, so now, when did that happen? Now, there's an account here in the Josephus, and I'm going to read this account in the Josephus. And this is in War of the Jews, book 6, which is down here, War of the Jews, book 6. It's going to be some reading. Let me see, chapter 3, I believe. It's going to be some reading. These letters are kind of small, but I'm gonna go and read it because this is going to give clearance to Deuteronomy 28 and 52 to 57. Yeah, I got. Hold up, let me open the door real quick. And Leonidas. Shalom. Hey, Leonidas just joined us. Shalom. Hey, you can. Yeah.
I'll show you a trick to make the letters bigger. On your keyboard, hold down the control key and then hit the plus sign while you're holding down control.
Control plus and they'll get bigger?
Yeah. Every time you hit. Yep.
Okay. Control plus.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know who I ain't get paid the big bucks.
Oh, yeah, that's what.
Yeah, you can hit it as many times you want until it gets as big as you want it to be. That's good right there. We can read it now. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so the water. You know, I didn't know about that, but now I do. That's why, Yep. So I'm going to chapter 3. Yeah, the water, because that helps. Because, man, them letters was mad small, man. So let me get here. Chapter 3, paragraph 3. War of the Jews, book 6, chapter 3, paragraph 3. Now, those that perished by famine in the city, this is dealing with the Roman siege of 70 AD. Now, those that perished by famine in the city, the number was prodigious, and the miseries they underwent were unspeakable. For if so much as the shadow of any kind of food did any were appear, a war was commenced presently, and the dearest friends fell a fighting one with another about it. Friends were fighting with each other over food. Now, the backstory to this, the reason why this happened is because, okay, the Romans besieged the city, but what happened is the Zealots and the Sicarii, right? That's going to be more reading. You know, it's going to be too much reading. We'll be here till 5 in the morning. The Zealots and the Sicarii, what they were doing is, okay, here it is. We're fighting against the Romans. Are you going to join the rebellion and fight with us? No. So then what these assholes did, these jagoffs did, they burned down the food supply in the city. You know, certain people had their own little gardens or whatever, growing things, this and that, whatever animals that they had, their own sheep, oxen that they had inside the walls of the city, chickens, whatever, they burned everything down. So now you had to join the rebellion because you had no choice to join and to fight. But then after a while, when they got into fighting with the Romans, there was no food to eat. They became malnourished. So there was no food in the city because these jackoffs They burned everything down. They burned the food reserves. That's the madness of the Zealots and the Sicarii when you go into the history and read about it. So I'm giving you the backdrop of why there was no food in the city. It says, snatching from each other the most miserable supports of life, nor would men believe that those who were dying had no food. But the robbers, those robbers, that was the Zealots and the Sicarii, would search them when they were expiring. So a person is dead, they'd be searching a dead person, make sure they wasn't hiding no food on them. Right? It says, lest anyone should have concealed food in their bosoms and counterfeited dying. In other words, you fake like you was dying so you could keep your food on you so they wouldn't take your food. This is what was going on. At the same time, we were sieged by the Romans. At the same time, this was going on inside the city. It says, but the robbers would search them when they were expiring, lest anyone should have concealed food in their bosoms and counterfeited dying. Nay, these robbers gaped for want and ran about stumbling and staggering along like mad dogs and reeling against the doors of the houses like drunken men. They would also, in the great distress they were in, rush into the very same houses 2 or 3 times in one in the same day. Moreover, their hunger was so intolerable that it obliged them to chew everything while they gathered such things as the most sordid animals would not touch. So things that certain animals would not touch, they were eating that. It says that it obliged them to chew everything 3 times in one and the same day. Moreover, their hunger was so intolerable that it obliged them to chew everything while they gathered such things as the most sordid animals would not touch and endured to eat them. Nor did they at length abstain from girdles and shoes and the very leather which belonged to their shields. They pulled off and gnawed. The very wisp of old hay became food to some, and some gathered up fibers and sold a very small weight of them for 4 Attic drachma. But why do I describe the shameless impudence that the famine brought on men in their eating inanimate things, while I am going to relate to a matter of fact, the like to which no history relates? Either among the Greeks or barbarians, 'tis horrible to speak of it, and incredible when heard. I had indeed willingly omitted this calamity of ours, that I might not seem to deliver what is so portentous to posterity, but that I have innumerable witnesses to it in my own age. And besides, my country would have had little reason to thank me for suppressing the miseries that she underwent at this time. Now he goes on to say, there was a certain woman that dwelt beyond Jordan. Her name was Mary. Her father was Eleazar of the village Beth Zab, which signifies the house of Hyssop. She was eminent for her family and her wealth, and had fled away to Jerusalem with the rest of the multitude, and was with them besieged therein at this time. The other effects of this woman had been already seized upon, and her other food and things, they already seized upon it and took it from her, right? So this was a well-to-do woman. This wasn't like just a regular everyday woman. Such, I mean, as she had brought with her out of Perea and removed to the city what she had treasured up besides, as also what food she had contrived to save, had been also carried off by the rapacious guards, who came every day running into her house for that purpose. This put the poor woman into a very great passion, and by the frequent reproaches and imprecations she cast at these rapacious villains, she had provoked them to anger against her, but none of them, either of the indignation she had raised against herself or out of the commiseration of her case, would take away her life. So they wouldn't take away her life. They would just kept coming to try to take food, see if she had anything. Then let me skip down because it's gonna be a lot of reading.
Yeah.
Okay. Go back to Deuteronomy 28 and let's read that again. 28 and where I had left off at
You were reading it. I don't know if you still got a tab.
Yeah, I got it right here. It says, and thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and thy daughters, which the Lord thy power hath given thee in the siege and the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children which he shall leave, so that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left him in the siege, and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in all thy gates. The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward her husband of her bosom, and toward her son and her daughter, and toward her young that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children which she shall bear, for she shall eat them for want of all things secretly in the siege and straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in thy gates. That was going on here during the siege here at Jerusalem. So now I'm going to go back up in here and touch on the story of this woman. Now it says here, it says, and if she found any food, she perceived her labors were for others and not for herself. So if she had any food that she found, those men were going to come back into her house and take it, because they kept coming in droves. They just kept coming in. Nah, you hiding food. You got food here somewhere. They kept coming in. Now it goes on to say, and it was now become impossible for her any way to find any more food, while the famine pierced through her very bowels and marrow, when also her passion was fired to a degree beyond the famine itself, nor did she consult with anything, but with her passion and the necessity she was in, she then attempted a most unnatural thing, and snatching up her son, which was a child suckling at her bed, she said, O thou miserable infant, for whom shall I perceive thee in this war, this famine, and this sedition? As to the war with the Romans, if they preserve our lives, we must be slaves. This famine also will destroy us, even before that slavery comes upon us. Yet are these seditious rogues more terrible than both the other. You see, the seditious rogues were the zealots and the Sicarii. She said they were more terrible than the Romans. Come on, be thou my food, and be thou a fury to these seditious varlets, and a byword to the world, which is all that is now wanting to complete the calamities of us Jews. As soon as she had said this, she slew her son, and then roasted him, and eat the one half of him, and kept the other half by her concealed. Upon this, the seditious came in presently, and smelling the horrid scent of this food, they threatened her that they would cut her throat immediately. So she roasted her son, ate half of him. These zealots and Sicarii came back into her house. Look, we smell something. You got some food in there. You better give it to us, or we're going to cut your throat. Right? So then it says, or we will cut your throat immediately. If she did not show them what food she had gotten ready, she replied that she had saved her very fine portion of it for them, and withal uncovered what was left of her son. Hereupon they were seized with an horror and amazement of mind, and stood astonished at the sight, when she said to them, This is mine own son, and what hath been done was mine own doing. Come eat of this food, for I have eaten of it myself. Do not you pretend to be either more tender than a woman? She says, so come and eat. Well, you're going to act like you're more tender than a woman now? Then it goes on to say, or more compassionate than a mother? Are you more compassionate than a mother? But if you be so scrupulous and do abominate this my sacrifice, as I have eaten the one half, let the rest be reserved for me also. After which those men went out trembling, being never so much affrighted at anything as they were at this. And with some difficulty, they left the rest of that meat to the mother. So that's what happened here in Deuteronomy 28:52-57. That was a common thing that was going on there in 70 AD in Jerusalem. That was talking about 70 AD, that distress. The wall, the city was, they sieged the city on the outside. The Zealots and the Sicarii, when you read further here in the Josephus, they destroyed the food reserves that were in the city. Then there was a point in the battle when there was no food for nobody to eat. So then they kept running up in people's houses. You got food in here somewhere. There's food here somewhere. There was nothing to eat. So that curse fell upon us right there during 70 AD, during the first Roman Jewish War.
It's coming down.
And guess what? It's coming back here in America in this day and time. Because, the food supply is being cut off. The different food processing plants, chicken, beef, bison, whatever the hell it may be, that nasty ass pork shit which we ain't supposed to eat, but people out there eat that shit. All the food processing centers here in America have been being burnt down over the last 2 years, and mainly last year into this year. I mean, every week 1, 2 are going up in smoke. You got the supply chain issues with the you got the prices with the diesel going up through the roof. Supply chain issues. This right here that we just read about in Deuteronomy 28:52-57, and we read an account in the Josephus. This is coming right here, right now, in this day and time. The stage is set right now for this to happen again here, right now. Where Keisha, you're gonna eat little Shah Meek and little Shah Quisha, because there ain't gonna be no food. You ain't gonna be able to go to the store and go get you some groceries, because the supply chain is being destroyed. So even though this happened in 70 AD, it's gonna happen again in this day and time. But here in America, it's gonna happen again. This time is gonna come back again. But again, people are reading and say, you can't say that. That was talking about 70 AD. They ain't talking about now. Well, guess what? You're going to feel it now in this day and time.
Precept for you.
Go ahead, Elder. Now.
This is Revelations 18:8. It said, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine.
Death and mourning and famine. So the stage is being set right now for that. Even on the regular local news media, they're talking about the food shortage. And they're talking about the supply chain, and they're talking about the food shortage. Oh, there's not enough truck drivers to go and get the stuff and bring it. Bullshit. The diesel is so high, a lot of truckers who are owner operators, they can't take the swing. It's too much money. Because when you have a tractor trailer, if you're an owner operator, you getting all the money. But if you pouring all the money into the gas tank, it's not worth it to go take the job, because the majority of it is going in the gas tank instead of in your pocket. So it's like you hustling backwards. We got a saying in the hood called hustling backwards. So it's now you hustling backwards. You're not hustling forward. You're supposed to go forward, not backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of trucks are being taken off the road because they can't afford it. They can't afford the swing. It's too much of a swing. Go ahead, brother.
Yep. It says, therefore, this is Revelations 18:8. It said, therefore shall her plagues come in one day. And that plague that's coming to Babylon the Great, aka America, come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord power who judges.
For strong is the Lord power who judgeth her. Now, the situation that's over there in the Ukraine, those Ukrainian soldiers, the reason why they sent $40 billion over there and they keep sending money in aid is because they're getting mollywopped over there by the Russian army. The Ukraine army has been trained by the UN. They've been training something like 10,000 troops a year for a certain amount of years. Trained in the UN tactics, style of fighting, even how to communicate and send communicades and all that stuff back and forth so that the enemy can't intercept it and all that. They're even better trained than the American army. And those Ukrainian soldiers that were trained by the UN, they got massacred by the Russian army. And that's why money and supplies just keep being sent to Ukraine, because they're not winning. They're getting their ass mopped up. And eventually the U.S. is going to have to go in there and send ground troops up in there. And what's going to happen? The Russian army is going to tear them a new asshole. And we're in this day and time. But now, if you got something to say, Elder Ayathon, please.
That scripture that I had Lamentations because that kind of it goes into.
You can read it. No, you can still read it because it's still edification.
Okay, so this is Lamentations 4:9, and it says, "They that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with hunger."
They that be slain with the sword are better than they that are slain with hunger. Right? Because at least that's a quick death. You hit with the sword and you out of there. You feel that pain or whatever for that instant, and then basically the blood is all out your body, heart stop beating, you stop breathing, you're done. But with the famine, where your body keeps eating and there's nothing to eat, so your body starts to cannibalize itself.
Yep.
Your body is eating you from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with the muscle. It starts with the muscle first. It eats the muscle first, then it starts to eat the fat. Your body will start feeding on the muscle first. After the muscle's all gone, then it'll go to the fat. Then it'll start going to anything else.
Yeah.
So they that be slain with the sword are better than they that are slain with famine.
Yep. It says, "For these pine away, stricken through for the want of the fruits of the field."
Right.
And look at those old commercials of Feed a Hungry Child.
Right.
With Sally, who's the name? Sally Weathers or whatever.
Right. USA for Africa.
Yep.
You seen they showed them Ethiopians over there. Here it is. They're skinny as hell, head looking big as hell, but their stomach is swollen. The stomach is not swollen because of food. It's swollen because it ain't no food.
Gas.
It's just full of a ball of gas. But their legs and their body is skinny as hell, but they got a big ass goddamn stomach like a bear belly, but it ain't nothing in there.
Mm-hmm. It's an air belly.
Yeah, it's an air belly.
Verse 12. Oh, it's like verse 10. Here's a point. It says, "The hands of the pitiful woman have saddened their own children."
Now, didn't we read that in the Josephus? It said the hands of the pitiful woman. It gave a story of a woman, but that was a common thing. The hands of the pitiful women have sodden their children.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Have saddened their own children. They were their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people.
Didn't we read that? They were the meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. That specifically is talking about 70 AD. But this was written during the time of Moses at Mount Sinai. That right there, those is talking strictly about 70 AD. It ain't talking about during the time of Zedekiah and Nebuchadnezzar II. That's talking about 70 AD.
Yeah, future prophecy.
It was a future prophecy. Even going into Babylon, that was a future prophecy. So that was it on that. So now let's go to the next verse, Deuteronomy 28:68. Right, which these devils are trying to say, hey, that's not talking about being put on ships and coming over here to America. So let's get that Deuteronomy 28:68. Deuteronomy 28:68. Right, it says, "And the Lord thy power shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." Now, with these devils and the monkey-fied ass niggas that follows this devil, no cap Mahone, right? Oh, that's not talking about coming into captivity here in America. Oh, that's not talking about that. Now, we went through with the situation dealing with Jeremiah. Let's get Jeremiah 27. Let's get Jeremiah 27 and read on down. Because we went into captivity, right? We went into captivity under the Babylonians, then it was the Persians. Then the Greeks took down the Persians. and then the Romans came up. But they're saying that when it talks about here going into Egypt, that you have to go back into Egypt again. Mind you, when Moses wrote this, we had came out of Egypt. The scripture said we're going to go into Egypt again, but this time with ships. We walked out of Egypt, right? And when Israel went into captivity under the Babylonians, they didn't go in no ship. Israel went down into Egypt willingly under Pharaoh Necho, thinking that they would have protection from Nebuchadnezzar II. Nebuchadnezzar went down there and grabbed Israel and dragged their ass to Babylon. It wasn't on no ship. They were dragged across land to Babylon, to the Babylonian captivity. That was the exile. After that happened, let's read Jeremiah 27, and then we'll go into it.
All right, Jeremiah 27:1. It says, in the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, thus saith the Lord to me, make thee bonds and yokes, and put them upon thy neck.
Wait a minute. He said, Jeremiah, make bonds and make yokes, and put them bonds, that you put around your hand, those restraints, and yokes you put around your neck. So make thee bonds and yokes. Go ahead.
And send them to the king of Edom and to the king of Moab.
Right. And send them to the king of Edom and send them to all the kings. In other words, make a bunch of bonds and make a bunch of yokes and send them to the king of Edom, the king of Moab, the king of Ammon. Send them to all the different kings round about Israel. Go ahead. Go read on.
And send them to the king of Edom and to the king of Moab and to the king of the Ammonites and to the king of Tyrus and the king of Zidon by the hand of the messengers which came to Jerusalem unto Zedekiah king of Judah, and command them to say unto their masters, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the power of Israel, thus shall ye say unto your masters, I have made the earth, the man and the beast that are upon the ground, by my great power and by my outstretched arm, and have given it unto whom I see meet unto me. And now have I given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon.
Right. So he told Jeremiah, make you yokes and make bonds and send them to all the different kings round about and tell them, I gave all of these lands to King Nebuchadnezzar. This is Nebuchadnezzar's time. So the Most High purposed Nebuchadnezzar to take over the entire known world at that time. And he told Jeremiah to send yokes to all the different kings and tell them, look, this word came from the Lord saying, look, I set Nebuchadnezzar up. Nebuchadnezzar is going to have all these lands. Now, later on in the book of Jeremiah, when you read on, Israel was like, oh, no, Jeremiah, we're not going for that. And in here, matter of fact, read down a little bit more in there.
Okay. Verse 6. And the beasts of the field have I given him also to serve him. Verse 7. And all nations shall serve him, and his son's son, until the very time of his land come. And then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him. And it shall come to pass that the nation and kingdom which will not serve the same Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and that will not put their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon.
Wait a minute. You had to put your neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon. Now, Jeremiah sent a yoke and bonds out to the kings because it symbolized you were going to be under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, meaning you were going to be under his rule. That was sent to them as a symbol saying, look, you're going to be under the yoke of this man Nebuchadnezzar. You're going to be under his rule. And anybody who would not be under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. That nation will I punish, save the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, with the sword and with the famine and with the pestilence until I have consumed them by his hand. Therefore, hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, nor to your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers, which spake unto you, saying, ye shall not serve the king of Babylon. For they prophesy a lie unto you.
Right. For they prophesy a lie unto you. You're going to have to serve the king of Babylon. So that was the Babylonian captivity. And what? They had to go under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar. Now, after this happened, right, that started around 589 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar had finally sieged Jerusalem, 589 to 587. Then they were dragged off into Babylon, right? But Israel, when you read on, they went down into Egypt under Pharaoh Necho, and then Nebuchadnezzar went down there and yanked their ass up out of there, and they were dragged into Babylon. Now, after the Babylonian captivity, you had King Cyrus of the Persians. Cyrus came on the scene around 539 BC. Matter of fact, could we get the book of Ezra in the Bible? Ezra 1, verses 1 to 4. And if we could get, if you give me Isaiah 45, verses 1 to 3.
Okay.
So now everybody had to be under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar II. Then Nebuchadnezzar's time was up, and we had to go under who? Cyrus. And be under the Persians, and then it became the Medo-Persian Empire. And then after that, then came the time for Alexander. After Alexander came the time of the Roman Empire. But through all those captivities, we still knew that we were Israelites. Go ahead.
Isaiah 45 and 1, or you want Ezra first?
Give me Ezra.
You call it Ezra?
Can you hear me, Ayathan?
I'll grab it. What is it? Ezra?
The voice was off. You got it.
Yeah, I got it. So this is Ezra chapter 1, first verse.
Right. This right here is tedious. Going into this history and reading these different accounts is tedious. It's not like this is not, how would you say, the sexy part. Everybody,
you got to know it. That's how you piece everything together.
Right. You got to know it. You know what I'm saying? So Jake, this is what Jake should really be getting into, but Jake like that sexy stuff.
Yeah, well,
you know what I'm saying?
4:6, my people are
destroyed for lack of knowledge, right?
See that?
15 and 4, the things written aforetime was for our learning.
Yep.
So this is our Ezra first chapter, verse 1. It says, "Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith King of Persia, Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord power of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah." Verse 3, "Who is there among you of all his people? His power be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord, power of Israel. He is the power, or he is the Most High, which is in Jerusalem." Verse 4, "And whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourneth, let the men of his place help him with silver, and with gold, and with goods, and with beasts, beside the free will offering for the house of the Most High that is in Jerusalem."
Right. So Cyrus came up, and he got power over Nebuchadnezzar because the Most High set him up. And then Cyrus made it so that way we could what? Rebuild the temple. So now the temple was being rebuilt. So now under the Persians, we still knew that we were Israel. As a matter of fact, we were able to build the temple. Now Deuteronomy 28:68 says, "Thou shalt see it no more again," which is what our homeland. Well, wait a minute. After the Babylonian captivity, we seen our homeland again. We went back into our homeland and built it back up. And during the Babylonian captivity, we still knew that we were Israelites.
Yep.
Go ahead. Now, you finished that right there?
Damn, Sluggy, I lost the verse I was in. I was in verse 4.
Verse 4 was the last verse. That's all I wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we get Isaiah, because it's something in Isaiah 44, but Isaiah 45, 1 and 3 pretty much caps it off.
Hey, but the elder said a heavy thing. He said this is the first captivity. All those captivities back then, we always knew we were Israelites.
Right.
And the heathen know that we would pray to the Lord, have mercy and deliver us.
Right.
That's why when the prophecy, or when the prophetic time of Psalm 83, where they said, let them cut us off from being Israel.
To cut us off from being a nation. That happened over here. That didn't happen over there. That didn't happen. Oh, hell, during the time of Judges, we still knew we were Israelites, or we went under 18 different nations. and we still knew we were Israelites. Then after the time of Judges, then you had the time of King Saul, and then King David. Then came King Solomon. Then after the kingdom, after the death of Solomon, the kingdom, you had his son. I believe his son was Jeroboam. Rehoboam, I believe, was the Ephraimite king. The kingdom was split. You had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. This was after the death of Solomon. The northern kingdom went under the Assyrians. The southern kingdom went under the Babylonians. The southern kingdom also went after Nebuchadnezzar's time was done. They went into captivity under the Persians, starting with King Cyrus. Go ahead. Isaiah 45.
All right, Isaiah 45 and 1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus' right hand.
He said to his anointed, which was who? Cyrus, his right hand. Go ahead.
To Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him. I will loose the loins of kings to open before him the two levied gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut asunder the bars of iron. I will give thee treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places.
Now he told Cyrus this. He said, Cyrus is my right hand. So he set Cyrus up after Nebuchadnezzar, and Cyrus came up, and now Cyrus is the king. Cyrus got the power now. Is there more?
God, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which called thee by name, am the power of Israel.
Right, am the power of Israel. But he was with Cyrus. He says Cyrus was his right hand at that time. So he was with King Cyrus to take down the Babylonians. And then Cyrus made it so that way we were able to rebuild the temple. He let the exiles that were in Babylon come back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple with Zerubbabel and Joshua. Right? But now Deuteronomy 28 and 68 says, and the Lord thy power shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. We shall be brought into Egypt again with ships this time. Egypt meaning bondage. Now, what these devils are trying to say that, see, that's not talking about. That means you had to go back into Egypt again, but this time on ships. And then you are going to be taken away, and then you're going to offer yourselves to be sold. What kind of bullshit is that? It makes no damn sense at all. But now after the Persians came who? The Greeks. So let's get First Maccabees 1 and 1 down to 9. So now the Greeks come up. Alexander the Greek has smitten Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, and now this was Alexander's time. This was the time of the Greek rule.
I got a quick
Go ahead, brother.
for you. This is Psalms. I go right to the point. The whole chapter is bad. But I go right to the point. Psalm 75 and 6. It says, for promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But the Most High is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. Right.
He putteth down one and setteth up another. He putteth down one and he sets up another. Now the next one to be set up is Alexander the Great. Go ahead.
That was it on that.
Mm-hmm. First Maccabees.
Okay. What'd you call Slacker? What'd you call for in First Maccabees?
First Maccabees 1 and 1. We're gonna read that on down. So now it's Alexander's time. And like I was saying earlier, when you go into the history in the Josephus, Alexander didn't come at us crazy. It wasn't until after him that the crazy shit started, which was after the death of Alexander the Great. Alexander was cool with us. Of course, yeah, he's the devil that the Bible speaks of, but he didn't come at us crazy when you read in the history. This was after his death is when really the shit hit the fan.
Yep. It says this is First Maccabees 1 and 1. And it happened that after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth.
Right. He made many wars and with many strongholds, and he slew the kings of the earth. Go ahead.
and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him.
Right. Nobody had an answer for him. Nobody could stand up to Alexander. Go ahead.
Whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die.
Right. Now it said he had many nations as tributaries unto him. We didn't have to pay tribute to Alexander the Greek. Again, it's in the Josephus. Because time is of the essence right now. It's in the Josephus. All you got to do is go to let me see. I'll tell you where to go where you can read the account. All you got to do is go to Antiquity of the Jews. You go to Antiquity of the Jews, and you go to Antiquity of the Jews, book 11, and the very last chapter in the last paragraph. It gives you everything you need to know about how Alexander dealt with us and the deal that he cut with the Jews. I'm not going to read it, but you can go read it for yourselves. And if you out there, go read it for yourselves. Antiquity of the Jews, book 11, and you go to the very last two paragraphs of the last chapter, and it's all right there. All right, so now we're going to go back here to Deuteronomy. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so verse 5. After these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then he died. And his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years. And evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes.
Right, that was Antiochus the Fourth. He was of the Seleucid line. He was out of the Seleucid line, and his name was Antiochus the Fourth. Seleucus was known as the king of the north. He had Syria and those different Syria and Asia Minor. He had those lands under him, and then Ptolemy was the king of the south. Ptolemy had Egypt, and in the middle of Ptolemy and Seleucus, the Seleucid Empire was who? Us, the Israelites. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi was smack dead in the middle of what became later on known as the Syrian Wars, and we was in between Ptolemy and Seleucus going against each other, vying for power to take each other's lands over. After the death of Alexander, go ahead.
And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, a king who had been in hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men who, excuse me, who
right,
persuaded.
In those days went out of Israel wicked men who what? They persuaded Israel to go follow after the custom of the heathen. So I don't understand what you simple ass monkey-minded Christians out there. Well, really, I do understand. And you wacky tacky Christians and you damn devils out there. This is when Israelites became Greeks. They became Hellenized. That's why in Galatians the 3rd chapter it says there's no difference between Jew nor Greek, because these Jews became Greeks at this time right here. This is Antiochus the Fourth, but before Antiochus the Fourth, you had Israelites that under Ptolemy, under the first Ptolemy Soter, that were brought into Jerusalem by Ptolemy Soter and into Egypt, and they were put in captivity in Egypt under Ptolemy Soter. Then his son, Ptolemy Philadelphus, he freed those Israelites who his father had brought and put and made captive there in Egypt, and basically made them be Greeks. And he gave them Greek citizenship. And then he commanded that the Jews' records be translated into the Greek. And that's when the Septuagint came about. That was under the son of Ptolemy Soter, who was Ptolemy Philadelphus. Right? As a matter of fact, I got it right here. Now, this is book 12, Antiquity of the Jews, book 12, chapter 2. It says, how Ptolemy Philadelphus procured the laws of the Jews to be translated into the Greek tongue and set many captives free and dedicated many gifts to the Most High. It says, when Alexander had reigned 12 years, and after him Ptolemy Soter 40 years, Philadelphus then took the kingdom of Egypt and held it 40 years with one. He procured the law to be interpreted and set free those that were come from Jerusalem into Egypt and were in slavery there, who were 120,000, because his father, Ptolemy Soter, took 120,000 Jews and brought them into Egypt into captivity. Now, notice they didn't go on no ship, because where Egypt is at, you just walk right there through the land of Judah. And he grabbed them and brought them down into Egypt, into captivity. Right? So his father did that, but then 40 years later, he became the ruler. And what he did was he freed those Jakes and gave them Greek citizenship. So in Galatians, it says there's no difference between Jew nor Greek. Why? Because the Greek that it was talking about were those Greek Israelites. They were Hellenized. Now, you had a group of Israelites before this was done by Ptolemy Soter. When Alexander came to Jerusalem, like I said, go back and read the history. Alexander sat down with the high priest and said, look, any of the Jews who join my army in my war campaigns, they do not have to bow down and serve any Greek gods. You do not have to pay no tribute to me. And those soldiers can freely worship Yahweh freely. They don't have to become Greeks. So you had a contingency of Jakes before Ptolemy Soter did what he did that was already spread out in the Greek Empire, but they still knew that they were Israel. Now, this next group, they were dragged by Ptolemy Soter there and like, nah, you're going to do the Greek thing.
Was it Antiochus? He said,
and then Antiochus came later. Yeah. He came later after this.
Yep, it said, let us all become one people.
Right. And then it, like you were reading about Antiochus the Fourth. So I just went back to this. So now let's go back and read about a little bit more Maccabees about Antiochus.
Verse 11, it says, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well.
Right. So this device pleased them well. So they were like, nah, we're just going to, we're going to follow these Greek gods and do the Greek thing. Because since we departed, we've had much sorrow. Go ahead.
Yep. Then certain other people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So they went after the way of the heathen. Now, doesn't it say, wasn't it in Corinthians 12? Remember in times past? Could you get that? I think it's 1 Corinthians 12 and 1. In time past, where you were carried away to these Gentiles, carried away to these dumb idols. That's the time past right there. Remember in times past where you were Gentiles carried away to these dumb idols as you were led. You reading it right there.
I got it.
Go ahead, brother.
This is 1 Corinthians 12 and 1. It says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led.
Didn't we just read that? What Antiochus the Fourth did?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we just read that? Carried away to these dumb idols as you were led. We read about before Antiochus, you had Ptolemy Soter, who took 120,000 Jews and brought them into Egypt and made them do the Greek thing. Then Antiochus came and he just went on a whole nother level with it. Right? Now, the reason why I'm reading this for Deuteronomy 28:68, because I'm setting something up. Now, we read about that with the Greeks. I'm not going to read too much more into it. Now, I just want to get to it because now the whole thing about going into Egypt on ships and all that, this devil, he tried to pull a fast one. But see, it seems, it's quite, going into the history is quite tedious, right? So like I said, this ain't the sexy part right here. This is the part where you got to be scholarly. So now I'm gonna pull up this video with this well, it is. Yeah. It is with this this devil right here. I'm gonna pull this up with him with this, this. I want to say something else. I'll just say this devil, right? And let me go back over here. Right, I'm gonna pull this up, and I want to play this. I want to show something.
Number 2, Third Maccabees.
Now, this dude talks about Third Maccabees. There ain't no Third Maccabees in the Apocrypha. It's only First and Second Maccabees. This motherfucker's pulling a fast one. There is no, because I was searching through. I'm like, wait a minute, this what shit he reading here? That's not in the Apocrypha. But now he's pulling up something called Third Maccabees. Now I'm gonna let him say his little spiel, because this is where he got a lot of people. That's why I was reading about thou shalt see it no more again. Thou shalt go into Egypt again with ships. Now watch this shit he pulls. Listen to this. This is at about this is about almost a 7-minute mark of this video right here on his channel. It's called Destroying the Abuse of Deuteronomy 28 Forever. Right?
Canonical, but there's some historical elements in him.
He said it's not canon.
When were the Israelites ever
canonical.
put into slavery in Egypt?
Watch this. Listen.
Third Maccabees. This is circa 217 BC.
Right.
Can I read Third Maccabees to you? For in such manner, with harshness and pitiless heart, were they sent away with one accord by the generals in the cities, that at their sight of their unusual sufferings, even some of their enemies with common pity before their eyes, remembering the uncertain issue of life, wept at their hapless departure. For there was carried away a multitude of old men, covered with their wealth of gray hairs, forcing to a swift journey, with feet bent and sluggish from old age, under the violence of their rough driving, which knew no shame. Describing what happened to the Jews under a certain Greek ruler, specifically a man named Ptolemy IV Philopator.
Right. So let's listen.
Third Maccabees, chapter 4, verse 7. And as prisoners exposed to public gaze, they were dragged along with violence until they were embarked on board in ships. Okay. I'm adding the in ships. It doesn't say that, but I'm saying, understand, on board is saying they're in ships. Verse 8. And their consorts with ropes on their necks instead of garlands, in the flower of their youthful age, spent the remainder of the days of their marriage feast in dirges instead of mirth and youthful ease, seeing the grave already yawning at their feet. And they were brought on board, driven like wild beasts under the constraint of iron bonds. Right. Some were fastened by the neck to the benches of the ships. Others had their feet secured in the strongest fetters. And further, they were shut off from the light by the thick planks above, that in entire darkness they might be treated as traitors throughout the whole voyage. But you may say, yeah, but what about Egypt? Verse 11. When they had been brought to the place called Shedia, and the voyage was completed as determined by the king, he ordered them to be imprisoned in the hippodrome that was before the city, a place of immense circuit and very suitable for making them a gazing stock to all who entered the city, and to those of the inhabitants who went into the country to sojourn, so they might neither communicate with his army, blah, blah, blah. Where's Shedia? It's a town of Lower Egypt near Alexandria.
It's a town of Lower Egypt.
Verse 14, and he commanded that the whole race should be registered by name, not for the wearisome service of labor, which was briefly described before. So it's saying this is for a different purpose, but they just were in service. They were just laboring. Do you see that? But that they should be tortured with the torments to which he had sentenced them. Verse 17, but after the aforesaid space of time, the scribes reported to the king that they were no longer able to continue the registration of the Jews on account of the incalculable number. Although the greater number of them were still in the country, some still remaining in their homes and others on their journey, it was impossible for all the generals in Egypt. Now.
So that's his claim to fame there. See? They were brought in chains on ships into Egypt, right? But now, I'm going to bust this shit wide open. Now, let's say that this is true. But let's humor this situation and say, okay, this is true, right? If that's the case, the scriptures say, thou shalt see it, hold on, let me go to Deuteronomy 28.
See it no more again.
It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy thee. Now, it said, ye shall not see it again, which is what? Our homeland. Now, if that is true, the Israelites that went into Egypt under the Greek occupation, what the fuck was Acts the 2nd chapter about? Israelites coming from what? Greek lands back to Jerusalem to what? Keep the feast. What about in Acts the 13th chapter where you had the contingency with Paul and them with the circumcision that were pissed off at them for bringing men into the temple uncircumcised, which were those Greek Israelites? Wait a minute. So that means they what? That was happening in Jerusalem. So those Gentiles or Greek Israelites, they seen the land again, didn't they? The scriptures say, thou shalt what? Hold up. The scriptures say, Deuteronomy 28, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. So it says when we go into Egypt this time, we're not going to see what? Our land again, our homeland again. Wait a minute. What was the controversy that was going on in the book of Acts? It was the Greek Israelites that were coming. They were uncircumcised. They were wild. So they were following them. Wait a minute. Paul wrote to the Corinthians, Ephesians, Thessalonica. Those were all Greek Israelites.
You had, and then the ones who took on the waves, like today's term,
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Rodman, D. Wade, Young Thug.
Right. You had niggas like that was being brought back into the fold. So they had to start slow because they lost it. So they were getting it back. Paul didn't impose circumcision on them and things. He told them, look, start with this. Okay, don't eat pork, don't this, don't that. Then later on, they build them up some now. Okay, now you got to get circumcised. They were mad because they said, you bringing men uncircumcised into the temple. So wait a minute, those Greek Israelites, what was Acts the 2nd chapter about? Them Greek Israelites came back to the land. And the Jews in Jerusalem, they wrote them off and they were like, oh, hell no. They doing it to this day right now.
Yep.
Right? But the scriptures say, thou shalt see it no more again, which is what? Our homeland, Jerusalem. So now this dude, he said, oh, I read out the book of 3rd Maccabees. When you go into the Apocrypha, 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Now, check this. This is called the New World Encyclopedia. 3rd Maccabees. Okay, let me do this. Well, I had done said Control and plus, right? Okay. Yeah. That's bring it back one. It says the book of 3rd Maccabees is found in most Orthodox Bibles as part of the Deuterocanonical books, but Protestants, Catholics, and Jews regard it as apocryphal. It tells the story of the persecution of the Jews of Alexandria and Egypt under Ptolemy IV Philopator, 222 to 205 BC. Despite its title, the book has almost nothing to do with the Maccabees or their revolt against the Greek Empire as described in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. So what the fuck did he pull the fucking fast one? Now, if you go into the Jewish Encyclopedia, they said that, look, some few little things that are mentioned in 3rd Maccabees is mentioned in Josephus. But what he read there, that's not mentioned in there. Now, I'm gonna come back to this.
That's the devil for you.
So what? This motherfucker tried to pull a fast one. That's why I was going through the history and reading through the history to get to this point.
Hey, but then you want to go on that level just to chop them up. The Lord said his people will be poor in the worst condition.
And that's in Deuteronomy 28.
But even when the Lord make his second coming,
right.
So that adds out the so-called Jew.
That's right.
Because they own the world.
They own everything.
The media, right now, the Wi-Fi,
Hollywood,
using everything. They own everything.
They own everything.
The Lord said, woe to them who are rich, for ye have received your consolation.
Right. Now, when you go into like Encyclopedia Britannica here, or even the let me see. This is Ptolemy IV, which is Philopator. Let me blow this up because it's hard to read this shit. Right. This is in the Jewish Encyclopedia. It says he was the king of Egypt from 222 to 205, hero of the servants described in Daniel's. The passage in question refers to battles between him and Antiochus the Great, more especially the decisive battle of Raphia in 217 BC, in which Ptolemy won a brilliant victory, and by that very fact showed himself to be a much more able ruler than is commonly supposed. 2 episodes in the battle of Raphia are mentioned in 3rd Maccabees also. How a certain Theodotus, conducted by a Jew called Dositheus, son of Dermilus, tries to murder Ptolemy in his sleep but falls in his purpose.
Failed.
While Arsenal, sister of the Egyptian king, incites the troops to fight bravely. 3rd Maccabees 1. Both accounts originate with Polybius and hence are historical. Accordingly, the rest of the story narrated in 3rd Maccabees cannot be pure invention. They're saying here that some of the stuff in 3rd Maccabees is actually somebody didn't lie about it. Some of it is true, but not all of it is. That's what they're saying here in the Jewish Encyclopedia. Then they said both accounts originate, and they're telling you where it originated. Accordingly, the rest of the story narrated in 3rd Maccabees cannot be pure invention, although there are absurd details in it. And that was one of the absurd details we read. Is what this dude tried to pull a fucking fast one. It says there are absurd details in it, which are doubtless due to the fact that the author is trying to glorify a great miracle. The author relates that after the battle of Raphia, Ptolemy Philopator visited Jerusalem and declared that he would enter the temple by divine interposition. However, he fell to the ground stunned when he had returned to Alexandria. He thought of revenge and caused all the Jews of Alexandria and Egypt to be bound and dragged into the arena to be trampled by his elephants, but the beasts threw themselves upon the king's troops instead. The Jews celebrated their escape by an annual feast day. Now, it says he was supposed to come into Jerusalem. It didn't say nothing about him taking the Jews out of Jerusalem and putting chains on them and dragging them. He went back to Alexandria, Egypt, and was torturing the Alexandrian Jews. Right? But now let's go back here to what it says here about 3rd Maccabees. In the this is called the New World Encyclopedia. Despite its title, the book has almost nothing to do with Maccabees or their revolt against the Greek Empire as described in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. However, it shares with the other Maccabean books a concern with issues such as the struggle of the Jews against a Gentile ruler who attempts to force them to accept Greek traditions. And it appears to borrow from 2nd Maccabees the theme of a miraculous intervention preventing a Gentile king from entering the temple of Jerusalem. Unlike the other Maccabean works, however, most of the book takes place in Africa. It also concludes with a spectacular, miraculous intervention by God to save his people from mass martyrdom by causing the Greek ruler to change his attitude, while in 1st and 2nd Maccabees, deliverance comes through God's support of the Maccabean military. See? Bullshit. He tried to pull a fast one. This motherfucker tried to pull a fast one. Go ahead.
If you knew God hates you and your people, it's coming back to destroy you. Well, of course they're gonna try to pull a fast one. And remember, this kingdom was built off lies. Now the Lord said the truth will set you free, and is dismantling this whole system.
That's right.
Remember, we were taught that we was all Africans.
Right.
You know, taught that the Puerto Ricans, the Native Americans, they come from Asia. You know, it's lie upon lie.
Lie upon lie upon lie. And they're being caught. Those lies they've been caught. And we've been bringing out the information. Now they're throwing out the disinformation. And the disinformation is just going to sway off who the Lord don't want. Because the Lord said the deceiver and the deceived are his. There's Israelites out there that the Lord wants you to purposely be deceived. He don't want you to find your way here.
Exactly. We talked about it earlier.
Right. He don't want you to find your way here. Go ahead, I think you have something to say?
Yeah, real quick. This is from Wikipedia. Now, this is in about...
put it up on a big screen. Can you put it up on the screen? Can you share it on the big screen?
Yeah, hold on.
There you go.
Okay. Hold on.
Yeah, the water blow up thing. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. This is regarding 3rd Maccabees, right? 3rd Maccabees.
Yep.
And here, I'll just start up here. It said about the history, or in other words, authenticity. The contents of the book have a legendary character, and it is not generally considered reliable as history. It is closer to a romance or historical novel, similar to the Book of Judith or Greek romances. Some parts of the story, such as the names of the Jews taking up all the paper in Egypt, or the king granting the Jews a license to murder apostates, are clearly fictional. Additionally, the book of Daniel, generally agreed to have been written around 165 BC, does not mention any such attack by the Ptolemies. Blah, blah, blah. Just read down to the part where I wanted to read. It said German historians Emil Schwerer call the book almost entirely fictitious and a work of the poorest sort. That said, while many elements of the story are dubious, scholars accept that memories of a genuine persecution might be being described in Third Maccabees if distorted. Then it goes on, but this is the main point right here. That there's a lot of scholars out there that say that the book is BS.
There you go. So he tried to pull a fast one.
Yeah.
See, that's so this devil, he pulled it. But you got caught.
Believeth every word. Right?
Go ahead. What was that, brother?
The simple believeth every word.
Right.
Yep.
See, he pulled the fast one, but motherfucker, you got caught.
And if you listen to everything from the apostles, the elders on down, everybody who truly got the spirit of Yahweh Shemel Shai, like the scripture said, we have an unction to know all things. The famines that's coming, the race wars, even the system that's being collapsed as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirit of the Lord had us prophesy that in bringing out the scriptures from day one.
That's right.
It hasn't changed to the chariots, the so-called UFOs. You still got so-called Bible scholars that went to their theologians schools or seminary schools that can't figure it out.
Right.
And it's like breathing and walking to us.
Right.
The Spirit of the Lord. It's a gift.
Right. It's a gift. It's like Elder Bishop Anab said, it's like breathing and walking to us. So we knocked that shit down. Now, going back to Deuteronomy 28 and 68, I'm going to read it again. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Right? Meaning buy you, meaning redeem you. The term, the word that's there, we're going to get that in the blue letter. The word that's there ultimately means to be redeemed. In other words, that's why Yahweh Shai is what? Our Redeemer. We weren't able to be redeemed since that happened. We still in captivity. We're waiting for the Redeemer to get us up out of here. We're waiting for redemption. No man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem thee. Not that you're going to try to offer yourself up to be a slave, but nobody's going to take your services. I mean, what a crock of shit. But now Deuteronomy 28 and 68. Now you also had in 70 AD. Let me see if I can in 70 AD, right, when the Romans, they besieged Jerusalem and they were, burning the city down, and we were going through the famine and all that there in the city of Jerusalem, and all that was taking place right there in 70 AD. Now, what happened afterward is there's an account here with Rudolph R. Windsor, right, where he says in here, in the book of Babylon and Timbuktu, Salakia, let me get this over here. Salakia. Pull that down. Right. So he says here in Babylon and Timbuktu, I just want to pull this point out. Page 84. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state. With great slaughter during the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Now, the slave markets is speaking about is the slave markets in Rome. The slave markets in Rome was full of black Jewish slaves because after you had 1 million Jakes that ran into Africa, the ones that didn't die in the siege that got caught, they were taken and they were put on the ship, and they were taken and brought to Rome and sold in the city of Rome. And they were sold to be used to fight in the arena, to fight against lions and tigers and bears. Then you had some that were sent down to Carthage to work in the plantations that were on Carthage because Rome couldn't feed itself. So after they brought down Carthage in 146 BC and they burnt the capital city down to the ground, they kept it as an agricultural outpost. Then you had Jakes that were sent there to Carthage, which is North Africa, which is Italy, the boot. You go right across the water, you're in Carthage. That's how close it is in the Mediterranean. Jakes had to go there, right? So let me see if I can I want to see if I can pull this up right here. So here we go here. This is an icon of the Roman slave market, and you see these Jakes got chains on them, right? You see this? If you any of you out there can see on the screen, you see this Jake? You see them walking with the lion and walk. These Jakes are on the camel. They're chained up. They're walking. He has a chain on him here. He's chained behind his back, and they're being what? Led into the slave markets in Rome. And look at that lion right there, because they're going to be fighting him. Let me see if I go back this way. This is that same picture, but this is the other side of the picture. Notice you see the Jakes up here. This Jake, he's chained up, and they're being what? There's tigers right there. They're being brought to the Roman markets to be sold. Let me go back over to this image right here. This is the same image, but this is the other side of that image. Remember, you see this same guy chained up on the other side over here? Look, see him? He's chained. The other picture, this is the same guy with the chain, but you don't see the other people there. So this was Jake being sold in the slave markets in Rome as slaves in Rome. Now I'm gonna read another little piece out of this book called it's called Ancient Civilization by the author of this book is a man named let me see if I can scroll this out of here like this. Here we go. Now out of this book is called Ancient Civilizations by a man named Hutton Weber, right? And it says here on page 422. It says during Vespasian's reign, a Jewish revolt was crushed, and Jerusalem, after a terrible siege of 6 months, was captured by the emperor's son Titus. It is said that 1 million Jews perished during the siege, and that 100,000 were sold into slavery in Rome. They were sold into slavery in Rome, right? And we're looking at images of that, and then them same Jakes. Let me pull out of here. Them same Jakes. There were Jakes that were brought into Carthage. Oh, let me I gotta pull it. I gotta pull this. Pull it up over here. Here we go. These same Jakes were in Carthage, working here in the fields in Carthage in captivity. Here's another one here. This is another image here of Jakes working in the fields there in Carthage in captivity. They're in North Africa. Here's another image here. We blow it up some. They're here working here in the agricultural fields in Carthage, getting goods to be sent back to Rome to feed the empire, because Rome used Carthage to feed them. Now there's a thing that I want to read here, because we read about 70 AD and about so I want to show this lecture that was done by this Jake named John Hendrick Clark, right? Because we're talking about Deuteronomy 28:68. Thou shalt see it no more again, right? And there you shall be sold to your enemies as bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So let me just jump up to about this point right here in the lecture with this guy, Hendrick. Let me see if this is it.
A.D. Now,
The volume is kind of low.
number of people because the only semi-European.
Okay, let me
We have been the true believers. Now, after the Romans destroyed the land
hold up.
of the people of the Hebrew faith, 70 A.D.
Listen up.
Now you got to watch it. You've got to study the migration patterns of the world. Where did those Western Asian people go? I see no migration pattern that took them into Europe. I do see a migration pattern that took a large number of them into inner West Africa. For a large number of people of the Hebrew faith lived in ancient Ghana, lived in peace up until 770 AD.
So now this guy is saying that you see a migrational pattern of Jakes after 70 AD going into Africa and going into what? West Africa. So now let's go back to Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now we came over to America on what? Cargo slave ships.
Yep.
He himself, he's a scholar. He said, look, after 70 AD, you see a migrational pattern of the Jews coming in Africa and going to West Africa. Where did we come from? We came from West Africa. Across here to America.
Fort Judah, Fort Benjamin.
You had over there on the Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, you had Fort Judah, Fort Benjamin, Fort Levi.
Yep.
They're on the Ivory Coast, all up and down the Ivory Coast. Even the Congo, that's part of the Ivory Coast.
Was that King Judah?
You had the kingdom of Wahida, which was right there, which was in what was known as the Republic of Benin. The kingdom of Wahida was right there, which is another way of saying Yahweh, the kingdom of Wahida. So this guy, vocab, you're the devil that the Bible speaks of, and you are a small hat, by the way. Yep. You're one of them small hats, and you're the devil that the Bible speaks of. You got anything to say, Elder Ayathan?
Little kites.
He's one of them small hats.
Ashkenazi. Even Esau coming out and said, look, they call them the Ashkenazi.
Right.
And they'll quote Revelations 2 and 9, 3 and 9.
Yep.
Esau, the scholars, say, nah, these ain't the real people.
Yeah,
look at their flavor.
That's
look
right.
At them. And they worship they read the Talmud. They do all kind of heathenistic, backward shit, sucking the foreskins off their children.
Yep.
You know, not laying a towel down when they have sex with their wife.
Yep.
All kind of weird shit.
Yeah, all kind of weirdo shit. Matter of fact, let's read about him. Revelations 2 and 9. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich.
Now, that's the most impoverished people is the so-called Negroes.
That's right.
You got them. Everybody talk shit about the Negroes. Here it is. The whole world of our talent, our soul, our food, our fashion runs the whole world. Even that the so-called the little hat people, the big nose little hat people, are selling the merchandise off of our flavor.
Right.
They'll tell our people that we're the dumbest, you're the stupidest, you're insignificant. But actually, if we was gone, this whole world would be in chaos.
Right. You so-called small hats, you're a parasitic race. The entire music industry, you suck the blood out of Israelites. It's Israelites that are the top sellers and the ones that's making the music, and you paying them what? You paying them 8 cents a record.
Oh no, you got
or less than that. No, you paying them less than that. A point on an album is 8 cents. So if they say you're getting 5 points on the album, that's 40 cents. So you're getting 40 cents. You're getting 40 cents off of every record sold.
Well, even think about it. You had the Nori, the one who's the host of the Drink Champs.
Mm-hmm.
He was bringing out. He said, "Look, this rap thing wasn't made for us to win." He's a rapper.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "If you come up with the first album, they might give you 800,000. If you don't recoup that, but you're still making a little buzz, they'll give you another advance of 1.2 and have you a $2 million debt. And if you don't recoup that, you got to pay that on top of the interest on that."
Oh shit!
That's why you always talk about. Did you recoup that? Did you
right.
make
Did
that?
you recoup
they
that?
give
Right.
you enough money to start off. You got to pay your producer. You got to buy an apartment. You got to live.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pay for the videos, the flights.
Yep.
So it's all a racket.
Right. It's all a racket, and they run it.
The deal is that they advance you some money, but you got to make it back. The majority of them don't even make it. Now they got a thing called the 360 deals that the so-called Jew has put out there.
Yep.
Where they own your likeness and everything that you do, they get a percentage of.
Because a lot of Jakes started making money selling T-shirts and selling merch that has nothing to do with the record label, and made money off of that, and they were able to sustain themselves off of doing the concerts and selling merch and doing appearances. The 360 deal, all of that's included. Your likeness, any merch that you make, even movies, even concerts that you do, that's supposed to all go in your pocket. They get a piece of that too. That's the 360 deal. That's what the devil, the so-called Jew, came up with. So they run and they control everything. The real Israelites, like the scripture says, I know thy works in tribulation, the hell that we're catching, and poverty, but thou art rich. Why? Because the kingdom is for us.
Rich in faith.
We're rich in faith. It says, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Which is talking about who? Them so-called Jews. I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan.
That's right.
And that's them so-called Jews.
They're the richest people. The Lord said his people will be impoverished. So you, like the scripture say, 1 John 4:1, try the spirit by the spirit.
That's right.
And then you had these precepts got lined up to what's going on. Make full proof of that ministry and prove all things.
And it says, Revelation 3:9, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not. And
they are the chief house of Satan. They run everything.
That's right.
They was the most oppressed people and put down and caught the most hell. How do they own everything?
Right.
And then talk about the so-called slave trade. There's only one people in the United States that had control over the slave trade on their holidays that this whole slave trade was shut down.
And that was the so-called Jew.
Yep.
During slavery, the auction blocks was closed on Jewish holidays.
Just like now, the so-called school systems are shut down on Jewish holidays because they run the world. Job 9:24.
Right.
Well, the stock market is shut down. The Negroes was a stock market.
That's right.
The auction block. So, yeah.
Hey, on Wall Street, they said they still got the prisons or storehouses where they used to keep the Negroes, and they had gat on the trading blocks.
Look at that.
Because you had the old timers in the old country that never got to see the other tribes. They wanted to see Gad, Reuben, Asher, Naphtali. So when they were catching them over here, they were sending them over there to Europe.
Hey, well, I mean, No Cab is trying his best.
Yeah.
He's trying his best.
He's doing his best. He's trying not to get fired. He's got to keep his job. But I got some real quick. Taz, you ever heard of John Wesley?
No, I never heard of him, but go ahead and get down.
All right, so I'm just share a little something real quick. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but John Wesley, when you read into the zoo, he could have been a Jake, man, because he had a lot of inventions. But this guy, John Wesley was an English cleric, theologian, and evangelist who was a leader of the revival movement within the Church of England known as Methodism. So he's the one that made the Methodist Church. He's the one that made it widespread the way it is now. The societies he founded became the dominant form of the independent Methodist movement that continues to this day. Now, this guy was an advocate against slavery. And this guy was, there he goes, born in 1703 and died in 1791. Now, he wrote this book. It's called Thoughts Upon Slavery. And in his book, basically, he was shutting down all the myths about Jake, because they would say, basically, they made it sound like slavery was a favor that they did to Jake, because Jake was such a monstrous nation and so barbaric with no culture that they had to save them. Slavery was actually a mercy for them, right?
Blessing for it. It says a blessing that civilized us.
Right.
That's what they said.
When it's actually in actuality the other way around. So I'm just going to some points he made, right? So he says, this is a good thing for you to read. But he says in part 2, such is the nature of slavery, such the beginning of Negro slavery in America. But some may desire to know what kind of country it is from which the Negroes are brought. What sort of men, of what temper and behavior are they in their own country, and in what manner they are generally procured, carried to, and treated in America, right? He has a picture of a slave ship from the 19th century right here on the left. Number one here says, and first, what kind of country is that from whence they are brought? So where do they go grab these Jakes from and bring them to America? It is so remarkably horrid, dreary, and barren that it is a kindness to deliver them out of it is a question. He's saying, were they in such of a dreary and barren, such a barbaric state that Esau had to go and deliver them out of their own land? And he's telling me he's going into West Africa. It says, I believe many have been apprehended so, but it is an entire mistake. If we may have give credit to those who have lived many years therein and could have no motive to misrepresent it. That part of Africa whence the Negroes are brought, commonly known by the name of Guinea, extends along the coast in the whole between 3,000 and 4,000 miles from the river Senegal, 17 degrees north of line, to Cape Sierra Leone. So these are all areas where Jake is at right now, West Africa.
Right.
It contains 700 miles. Then it runs eastward about 1,500 miles, including the Grain Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Gold Coast, and the Slave Coast within a large kingdom of Benin. From thence it runs southward above 1,200 miles and contains the kingdoms of Congo and Angola. So he's going into technicals.
Right. So
right?
That's all West Africa.
All West Africa.
In the Congo, there's Jake in Angola.
Nigeria, all over.
Nigeria is more up north.
Yep. So see, this is what you got to do, man. You got to go. Vocab and all these guys put out misinformation. All you got to do, man, is you got to go and find like eyewitness accounts, autobiographies, biographies. All Spaniards and different guys that lived back in those times, they wrote autobiographies about what was actually going on
And what they seen.
That's why that movie Goodbye Uncle Tom, that was a lot of manifestos that was written.
Right.
That they were
exactly
reading out of.
And you can't get around those. This is why Esau wants to do away with books, right? Because it has eyewitness accounts of things. So it says, concerning the first, Senegal Coast, Monsieur Bru, who lived there 16 years, after describing its fruitfulness near the sea, says, the farther you go from the sea, the more fruitful and well improved is the country, and abounding in pulse. Now, when you go back to the book of Daniel, what did he eat when King Nebuchadnezzar offered meat to eat when he was locked up? He said, nah, give me pulse instead. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says, abounding in pulse, Indian corn, and various fruits. Here are vast meadows which feed large herds of great and small cattle, and the villages which lie thick show the country is well peopled. And again, I was surprised to see the land so well cultivated. And basically, man, he goes down and he talks about how Jake was flourishing. Then he goes about the manner of the people because they try to say they were brute beasts. So he goes into how Jake they were well-mannered and they were kind. And anytime a slave came and captured one of their brethren, they basically formed a coalition and one that got the slave. So he's basically debunking with eyewitness accounts everything that Esau lied about.
Right.
But we could go into this in another lesson, but the main point was to bring more evidence that Deuteronomy 28:68 is talking about the ships that went to West Africa and grabbed up Jake that was there and brought him over here to America. Now, if I could read go back to Jeremiah 17:4 again.
Right, go ahead.
Hey, before you read that, add something to you. With everything you bringing out, how Jake kept up the land, the agriculture, and the cities was beautiful. You know, RT News every Thanksgiving, or they had one for Thanksgiving, was talking about they had the manifestos for the Pilgrims and Puritans.
Right.
They said when they came over here with Gad and Reuben, said that they had aqueducts, the cities were swept and was immaculate.
Yep.
Now you did have some savage people like Apocalypto,
right?
That when they was on a sun god worship and doing some foul shit, but they said their cities were immaculate.
Yeah. And plus, it prophesied that Israel was going to take their son or sacrifice their sons and daughters.
Yep.
Israel was doing that.
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, in the scriptures is I forgot who it was, but he built an aqueduct. It's in the scriptures. But the northern tribes were known for their structures and for their architect. Yep. And you're right, Eldar. Even the Spaniards, they spoke about, you talking about the Apocalypto, but even them, man, they had aqueducts, they had floating gardens, right?
Yep.
They had floating gardens, they had streets. Like when you go to expensive neighborhoods like Miami, them expensive roads, when you drive down the roads or even like the expensive malls, they have in the aisles, they have plants, floating gardens in the middle of the aisles and in the middle of the streets. Well, they got that from Israel because Issachar had that. Back in the Apocalypto days, they had floating gardens. Now they got hydroponic plants. Issachar invented hydroponic plants, and they had the hanging gardens and all that stuff. That was all Jake, Now Jeremiah 17:4 says this, right? And thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies and the land which thou knowest not. So that's the main point. So Bishop Taz, he was going into how, in Third Maccabees, he brought out that history about, which is fictitious, but he's trying to say that they brought some Jakes back into Egypt. So that disproves what we say about Deuteronomy 28.
Right.
Well, right here, you could compound it. Right here, it says that we're going to be brought to serve in a land that we know not. So we've been to the land of Egypt before. We've been to all those lands. But here in America, that's a land when they went to West Africa and bought Judah, Benjamin, Levi, they never been to the Americas.
God, remember this was called the New World, the uncharted land or whatever. Now you had like the Vikings, Hiram Abiff and all them guys that they would come over here grabbing cedar trees, and they say an account to bring it back to Solomon, but nobody ever dwelt over here or inhabited this place.
This was the land where mankind never dwelt.
That's
they
why
came over here to get goods to bring back to Jerusalem.
And this is a land where we completely lost our heritage here in America, because even when the slave ships went to West Africa, they knew they were Israelites. You had the forts with Israelite names. And then that account that I was reading earlier with John Wesley, he's going into their mannerisms and their customs and their feasts, and there were Israelite feasts. So that's why when you go to the book of Revelation 11 chapter, he speaks about how in the land as spiritually known as Sodom and Egypt, that Israel was going to return back to the nationality and they were going to stand up with great fear. That never happened before that time. So you bring all these things out, man. I mean, there's no way around it. So vocab is out there to blind whoever is meant to be blinded, because like you said, the scriptures say that the elect have attained it, but the rest were blinded.
Right.
So he's doing the Lord's work, which is cool, but he's not going to deceive the elect.
No, it's the Lord said if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect.
God.
If
hey, GMS Hawaii, what link are you talking about to send?
Oh, this one with John Wesley.
About I think either is it John Wesley or about the aqueduct. He was saying, I think that's what he was looking for. You're saying it in the thing to put the link in there for you. What link is it that you're looking for, brother? GMS Hawaii.
the scripture also say if our gospel be hid, it's because the God of this world has blinded them. Those Jesuits, Illuminati, high priests, whatever you want to call them, they all working together with whatever name they use.
Of course.
But to deceive the masses.
Oh, the John Wesley. Okay, you put it up in there. Okay, yeah, that's what he wanted, the John Wesley.
Okay.
He put it in there for you, brother. He put the link in there for you. If you click on it right now, it'll pop up on your screen and you can go follow it. GMS Hawaii. Yeah, so I mean, so we pretty much busted up that vocab Malone bullshit.
Yeah, through spirit, Barakatah Yahweh Bashim
Yahweh. You got anything to add, Bishop Inap or Elder Ayathan? Bishop Ayathan?
That's it. Hey, man. Said, hey, that you know, the truth shall set you free.
Yep.
You know,
know the truth,
lie,
and the truth shall set you free.
Okay, no lies of the truth. You
right.
know?
And well, hey, and about them, and about the small hats, right? And in Deuteronomy 28, 43 and 44, it says, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. Them small hats, they're above everybody.
The East Indian Dutch, the West Indian Dutch, those were
those companies that they set up. The East India Dutch Company, West India Dutch Company, they set up, which was basically that was all dealing with slavery. The money was going to the so-called Jew.
And that's why over here in Newport, Rhode Island, you got the Toro Synagogue, the oldest synagogue in America, is over there established because that's where they started the slave routes, you know, from. They was going over there to Newport, Rhode Island was a heavy slave trading port. And now that they got historians, when you go to the dock, that you go use your phone, how you pull up a menu,
right, and
then pull up the history and how they were bringing in the slaves through that Newport, Rhode Island.
And Newport, Rhode Island over there, that's where they were running rum and wine. How the scriptures say they have given a girl for a barrel of wine, right? A harlot for a barrel of wine. So that was coming from here, from Newport, Rhode Island, where these so-called Jews were trading wine or rum for a girl or for a boy. Like it says in Joel, he has given it said wine for a girl, or wine they said a harlot.
It made a boy a harlot.
Right.
Made a boy a harlot. They were selling boys.
Yep.
You know, some little Jake boys, they show you that in Goodbye Uncle Tom. That's one of the heaviest slave movies. After that, that's why I said if you was an Uncle Tom, it would be
Goodbye Uncle Tom, because there's no way you could be an Uncle Tom after seeing that movie Goodbye Uncle Tom. Now Deuteronomy 28:44, he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Who runs all the banks? When you go to get a loan, you got to deal with these so-called Jewish bankers.
Weinberger, Epstein,
Bear Stearns.
Yep.
They have the mortgage. They're the mortgage lenders.
Yeah.
And they move the stock market.
Right.
They're the ones that move the stock market. They own the stock market. They're the ones that causing the stock market to crash. They got the money to make that shit crash and to survive the crash.
That's right.
Yep. So pretty much, I mean, you know, we pretty much, I mean, it's long and it was tedious, but.
Oh, hey, just another footnote about the so-called Jew. They run all the football NBA teams. You had, what's his name? Damon Dash. He said he tried to purchase the LA Raiders. He said the white boys wouldn't let him in. It's not about the money. Right. It's about whites, quote unquote, white supremacy. The good old boy club, like Stephen A. Jackson say, Stephen Smith from what's that?
First Take.
First Take.
Yeah, it's the good old boys club. That's what it is.
Yeah. And Amalek ain't letting you in there. It ain't about the money. That's why Bill Cosby couldn't buy NBC.
Right. Because he tried to buy NBC And the first time he tried to buy it, his son Enos was killed after that.
Yep.
Then when he tried to buy it again, these fucking allegations from these women, they threw that up. And that was all thrown up to offset what was going on with the Pizzagate and the Jeffrey Epstein thing. They threw the Bill Cosby thing up there on TV. They went after him, violated his rights. And then they did the Surviving R. Kelly thing. Then they threw Michael Jackson up in there. And then COVID hit on top of that. And the C-19 hit. That's all to block everybody because nobody was looking into Jeffrey Epstein and Pizzagate no more.
Nope. Hardly even hear about it.
You don't even hear about it now. They totally blocked all that with Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, C-19, and what's the other one? What's the other one I have mentioned? Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, C-19. Oh, and then Michael Jackson. They threw Oprah, that bitch, she did the Michael Jackson documentary and threw that out there. All of that was put out there with the C-19 right when they was getting ready to do the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and all that. And Hillary Clinton was a part of that, Pizzagate and all that.
Podesta, all of them. Remember that ping pong pizza?
Mm-hmm.
And the news reporter who really reported and broke it down on them, they fired him.
Yep. Oh, and the Harvey Weinstein thing too was back then. That all got pushed to the side. The Harvey Weinstein with the allegations with the different women. Even Ashley Judd came out and was like, yeah, he did it. He got me too.
Yeah. Amalek.
Yep.
Damn. Scamalek.
Yeah. Yep. Scamalek.
Yeah. That'd be it. And Biden was in the midst of all that.
Right.
Biden was in there. They got Biden touching
Creepy
up
Joe.
Yeah, that's his nickname. And they got him touching up all them little girls all over the place.
Yep.
Now you can't hardly find that footage on YouTube no more.
Mm.
You know,
they
the Spirit had it before Biden. We even thought he was even going to be in the presidency.
It was all up there.
The Spirit had it where we did shows and put his footage in there. Yep. Now you can't even put it on there. You can't even hardly find it.
Yeah, because they wiped it off.
Yep.
So so we hope that you brothers and sisters, a few sisters that might have been on the comment board, that you were edified. And I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakakodash, and say shalom to the next one.
Shalom.